When we think of particular countries that are really committed to strong sustainability, the one country that comes to mind is not New Zealand, no, but Bhutan. Bhutan is a kingdom in Middle Asia that has a long tradition of living within the realms of nature. It's of course a deeply spiritual country as well. Buddhism is the dominant culture there. And in more recent times, Bhutan government became known for redefining the parameters of what makes people happy, or what makes, what constitutes development. So they're famous for the parameters to measure happiness rather than economic growth and that kind of thing. But this might be a somewhat esoteric example, esoteric in the sense that a country like Bhutan, other Buddhist countries and indigenous societies are of course at the other spectrum of the Western rational economic world. So if we look a little bit further around the world, in more recent times we find a number of interesting developments, especially in Latin America, or in more general terms, wherever indigenous peoples have a greater say in public affairs. New Zealand is an example. We're seeing a current renaissance of our Maori heritage, and it's been recognized at international level that there is a right of self-determination of indigenous peoples. This is important and significant in my view. In more tangible terms, you can say a number of Latin American countries, over the last 2-3 years only, formulated new constitutions, like Ecuador, Bolivia, to an extent also Venezuela. What they have done is they really went into their own indigenous traditions and defined the fundamental values under which the governments want to be guided and society want to be guided. And inevitably those constitutions do one thing right. They always speak about the relationship between rights and responsibilities. In our Western context, all about rights, property rights, even environmental rights, the right to have something and so forth. For historical reasons, there was a case for promoting human rights. But in more recent times, we need to realize that each right comes with a responsibility. So the Ecuadorian constitution, for example, specifically dedicates rights to nature to counterbalance our rights that we might have vis-à-vis nature. So Mother Earth, for example, might be conceived as something more fundamental than human beings, and we all owe our due to Mother Earth. So those sentiments are expressed in constitutions, and constitutions are not just, lyric. They are a commitment, a sincere commitment of governments, of society at large. They translate to better laws. So we can see those developments. Brazil, for example, has introduced a ecological obligation for property rights. That they have done so some 15 years ago already. And we have exciting case law from the Supreme Court of Brazil, where farmers are required to really make sure that the use of the land is conducive to requirements of sustainability. So that's that there. Closer to home, so to speak, as far as New Zealand is concerned, we are obviously largely influenced by our European heritage. When you look at Europe, you have, of course, a number of countries that are rather committed to the sustainability path, not in strong terms yet, but certainly to the sustainability path. Just a few examples. Sweden has for a long time a national strategy for sustainable development implemented with a number of new ideas, such as reporting to the Parliament on an annual basis on any progress on sustainability, a much more ambitious tax system, petrol, for example, is a tax a lot higher than most other countries. Say Germany is of course famous for high petrol taxes, and a special German contribution was the ecological tax reform that started about 10 years ago. And what that means essentially is that you punish bad environmental behavior and you award good environmental behavior. And the beauty of this kind of taxation is that it doesn't even cost more. It doesn't cost more to companies, for example, because part of the ecological tax reform is also a lowering of taxing of labor. More in European countries than New Zealand, you have a major aspect of production costs associated with labor costs, all sorts of fees that employers traditionally need to be paying. And the thinking was, okay, we ease the tax pressure on companies by making labor cheaper, which of course is a good thing in itself because it puts people into jobs. And on the other hand, those companies who are producing in an unsustainable or polluting manner would be punished. And this is similar to the emission trading scheme. You have a certain choice whether you want to pollute and you pay for it, or if you want to avoid payments, you just minimize pollution and so on. So the ecological tax reform has progressed to a certain extent. It's not fully fledged, but has influenced other countries, Netherlands and France and so on. This is something I find very significant.
Start the debate and discussion now about economic alternatives. Stop accepting that the way we live now is something we cannot change, because we can.